Hello, Internet, and welcome to this week's edition of 1 Minute News from 1 Minute Economics, an edition dedicated to the G20 summit that has taken place in Germany, specifically Hamburg. And I think it's important to pay attention whenever you have that many influential people in the same place talking about stuff. But at the same time, we do have to understand that with events like this one, the main goal usually revolves around reaching some kind of a consensus. And to do that, when you have so many people with different agendas, belief systems, and so on, you have to make compromises when it comes to things like verbiage. So a lot of the final statements are, let's say, interpretable, for lack of a better term, so that in the end everyone's happy. But still, I think we need to pay attention to events like this one, and here's what we're going to do. I'm going to start by analyzing the climate talks of the G20 summit in 1 minute. Then I'm going to dedicate a minute to taking a look at the trade discussions, and finally, we're going to analyze defense in a minute as well. Let's start with climate, and unfortunately, the summit was kind of a fail in that respect, in that the much hoped for consensus was not reached. Now, on the one hand, it's true that you did have 19 out of 20 countries that made it clear they support the Paris Accord and have every intention of implementing it. But on the other hand, you have the United States that refuses to do so. And even more so, something pretty peculiar happened in that the final statement contains a section in which the position of the United States is highlighted and in which even a reference to fossil fuels is made. So all in all, things are definitely tricky, to put it mildly. And of course, you have people like President Macron who try to make things happen by inviting everyone to a summit about climate that's going to take place in December. But it will be an uphill battle for sure, because from election campaign to presidency, Trump has made it clear that he doesn't like the Paris Accord, and therefore, one, changing his mind in the first place is going to be incredibly difficult. Two, even if he does change his mind, he would be in a political pickle, because changing his mind would be seen as, taking a step back from his America First campaign promise. So yeah, it's gonna be a diplomatic fine balancing act, for lack of a better term. And, what can we do? People expected a consensus. Okay, maybe not expected, but hoped for a consensus. But that consensus was just not there. And therefore, I do believe I'm not exaggerating one bit when I call this summit a fail from the perspective of climate. Moving on to trade, I'm going to say that the summit was not spectacular, but at least it wasn't as much of an epic fail situation, if you will, in that we did have a consensus, as in people gathered and signed a paper on which it said that protectionism is bad and free trade is good, which is in and of itself remarkable in light of the fact that, let's be honest, protectionism has spread quite a bit all over the world, from the United States to Hungary, from Turkey to the United Kingdom. So with that in mind, I do believe that it's pretty smart on our part to adopt a bit of a we'll take what we can get mindset. On the other hand, though, it's clear that there are definitely a lot of tensions in the air when it comes to trade, with, for example, the United States openly accusing the European Union and China of dumping practices when it comes to the production of steel. And of course, the European Union produces 2 times more steel than the United States. And when it comes to China, things are even more spectacular, with the Chinese producing 9 to 10 times more. So yeah, trade is going to be a tricky issue for sure. And humanity at this point, I believe, pretty much has a choice to make. And that, one, we can choose the path of worldwide protectionism, or two, we can choose to, keep living in the free trade paradigm, or if possible, even improving it. So, yeah, it's very, very hard to reach a consensus on trade these days, with so many agendas at play and so much political capital at risk. So with that in mind, I guess we can consider what has happened with the summit in terms of trade somewhat of a mild success. Finally, I think that from the perspective of defense, the summit was pretty successful because, one, for the first time officially, because unofficially we don't know, President Trump met with President Putin, and even more so, their meeting lasted longer than expected, something that even pleased Chancellor Merkel. Number two, the fact that there were tangible results as well, so not just rhetoric or pretty words written on a piece of paper. For example, the fact that a partial ceasefire was negotiated for southwestern Syria, and I believe any development of this nature is definitely a good thing. Number three, the fact that finding common denominators has been a bit easier when it comes to defense because you have things like, for example, the fight against terror, and pretty much everyone agreed that more has to be done, not just when it comes to military action, but also when it comes to things like avoiding radicalization through, for example, limiting the spread of propaganda online. Now, on the one hand, this is all great, and I'm referring to the internet thing, but on the other hand, as a creator, I do tend to raise an eyebrow whenever governments talk about limiting the spread of propaganda, because the state sometimes has this tendency of being a bit too far-reaching, and that, okay, you have the idea of combating terrorism. But if you get carried away, you might inhibit free speech. So while I do agree that something needs to be done, I also believe that we need to pay special attention. But yeah, maybe that's a topic for another video. All in all, though, I do believe that while not spectacularly successful, we can consider what has happened in Hamburg successful, period. So more than moderately successful, but not spectacularly successful, which is not bad at all. That's it for today, guys, and if you were looking for a conclusion along the lines of was the summit overall a success or a failure, I would say that had a consensus existed when it comes to climate, I would have went ahead and called the summit a moderate success. However, in light of the fact that an agreement was just not there on that topic, I'm going to say that after drawing the line, I'm kind of torn between considering the summit neutral and considering it a moderate failure. So yeah, that's just my perspective. And with that stated, thanks again for tuning in to yet another edition of 1 Minute News from 1 Minute Economics. And as always, please like my videos, comment, be active in the community, and subscribe to 1 Minute Economics if you haven't by now. Also, please try to develop the habit of telling your friends about the channel, because even something as simple as a Facebook post helps tremendously. And also, those who want to support the channel financially as well can do so by buying my Wealth Management 2.0 book or donating through PayPal, Bitcoin, or Patreon. For more info, head on over to 1minuteeconomics.com. Thanks a lot, guys, and have an awesome week.